glad you've pulled up a chair. I'm Nora with It's Your Encore. I'm the editor of a magazine for women aged 50 and up. It's about your second half of your life, and it's underway. And we're very excited about everything. And I'm with my good friend Carly.
Thank you, Nora. So, Nora brings that Renaissance woman wisdom, the perfect balance to my millennial pop culture perspective. I'm Carly, editor of the Cute North Georgian magazine.
And we're here in North Georgia. And life moves kind of with a quiet cadence. I mean, we have rolling hills, and we call them mountains, but they're rolling hills. And we have sips of wine at world-class vineyards and whitewater kayaking and stories steeped like Lipton in a boiler.
And each week, we bring you thoughtful, faith-informed conversations about life, community, and culture, rooted in the place that we call home, from local voices and happenings to reflections on the world beyond the mountains. We're here to create a gentle space for connection and, if we're doing our jobs correctly, even a little laughter.
Hopefully so. Pour yourself a cup of tea. This is my favorite mug, by the way. I've had it for years. Take a breath and join us in good company.
Today, we're joined by Amanda Browning of Amanda's Farm to Fork. She's here to share the story behind her baking and venue business, and she is dropping a huge announcement exclusive on our show.
You didn't tell me that. That's exciting.
I know.
And later in our advice segment, we'll respond to a listener who said, "My stepdaughter is ugly. How can I help her?"
That's right. And in our headline segment, we are going to talk about the assassination of Charlie Kirk and 9/11 and political violence. So it's easy to say that we have a lot to talk about. So it's best to roll up our sleeves and let's get started.
Let's do it.
Now, it's time to dive headfirst into that matcha-filled pool that we call pop culture. And wow, this week, the matcha pool is overflowing. From Meghan Markle trading tiaras for a cooking show to Miley Cyrus and her much-discussed buccal fat removal to Labubus flooding TikTok feeds, and of course, the latest buzz in movies and TVs. Let's unpack what's new this week in our culture. All right, so Nora, you won't believe this, or maybe you've already seen it, but over 300 Claire's stores have closed nationwide. And
My girls to get their ears pierced at Claire's. I mean, this is heartbreaking for me. I just want to say.
I agree. Not only have 300 Claire's closed nationwide, but the one at the Cornelia Walmart in Habersham County just closed. So for those that don't know, Claire's was like the tween headquarters, okay? Picture racks of glittery earrings, neon, hair bows, scrunchies, costume jewelry, feather boas, those little lip gloss keychains. Like when I was a kid, visiting Claire's was a rite of passage. And just like, your daughters, probably half of us got our ears pierced there with this terrifying piercing gun and clutching a teddy bear.
Yeah, they got on either side.
Ooh.
Like when, I was young and I got my ears pierced, they would do one and then the other.
Yeah.
And so you petrified but at Claire's, they got on either side and boom, hit you both times, But Claire's is such a place to get a gift. I mean, if you didn't know what to get somebody for their birthday, you take your daughter, she pick out her best friend something. I mean, it was just such an easy thing.
It was. I don't know what I'm going to do when I have to shop for my tween cousin now, because you're right. It was a go-to place where you really couldn't go wrong because everything was so perfectly curated to that age. And, Claire's isn't the only tween store disappearing. So do you remember Limited 2 or Justice?
Gosh, yes. My girls loved it.
Yeah. I was a huge Limited 2 girl, and then I became really edgy in 2008 and became a Rue 21 girl. But that one's disappearing too. And those tween-focused stores where like everything sparkled and screamed, or was like super edgy, if we're talking Rue 21. All of it just screamed middle school fashion. And we can all picture it, right? And they're extinct now. And that makes me sad.
Body glitter.
The body
My,
glitter.
I know. You know, that is such a, I don't know, that's such an awkward stage of life. And to have those little places were so key and so important for my girls.
They help you conform. And I'm a believer, look, it's going to be controversial, but I'm a believer that in middle school, you should conform. My parents always told me to be a nonconformist and encouraged me to be myself in middle school, which was terrible advice. It was awful. They should have told me to conform, 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 and survive. But those stores helped you do that because,
Yeah.
again, it's like when you go to shop at Claire's, you really can't go wrong, right?
I
So
know.
when you go to,
Do you remember the little neon jelly bracelets and the little shoes and it was such a cute place.
I've got bad
And
news
you
about those
felt
jelly
so good.
bracelets, Nora.
You
Those
do?
those are actually those were sex bracelets.
What?
And yes, so the different colors.
Carly, tell me
I'm
that kind of
serious. No, that's true. Fact
no.
check true. Yes, they were. And depending on the color was
Are you
supposed to determine, yes, 100% that was a thing. Not the silly bands. I mean like the little gel bracelets, the little thin ones.
okay?
That was a big thing at my school. Of course, it didn't mean anything, really. It's just a bunch of middle schoolers grandstanding, I guess.
Hmm.
But back at my school, Little Mill Middle School, or Little Pill Middle School, as it was known back in the day, that was it. That was the symbolism there. I'm so sorry, Nora.
Okay, let's skip along.
Yeah, last week it was Labubu's. This week it's the sex bracelets.
Yeah, no. Okay, if you tell me that the butterfly clips have a special meaning, we're just going to skip on too because I loved the butterfly
Me
clips.
too. Butterfly clips, totally safe.
Love.
So, yes, and I loved, of course, there's the lip smackers, there's the roll on body glitter, like you said. 11-year-olds, however, today are not purchasing lip smackers, they're purchasing eyeliner at Sephora. And they're snapping up these like $80 drunk elephant skin serums. My cousin, and I love her so much, she cracks me up because she will reduce the amount of smiling because she doesn't want wrinkles, right? Rare Beauty blushes, that's the name of the product, is Rare Beauty. And yeah, no, I mean, it's real concerns that people have. The expensive skincare lines are huge right now with the teens and tweens. Huge.
That's crazy.
They have a much better skincare regimen than I do, which is soap and water.
Yeah, I was riding horses and hanging out at the barn and getting blistered in the sun.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the tween skincare fridges, like actual honest to goodness fridges, right? And they've skipped this awkward phase. So like where we had like the crooked ponytails and we had the questionable fashion choices. Now they're going straight into the Ralph Lauren polos that I still purchase from eBay, right? They have the Lululemon leggings and the Nike Air Force Ones, and they look like college freshmen at 11.
Wow. I don't think that's good. I
So
don't,
sad.
you know, I don't really, I don't know. Middle school to me, I wouldn't go back. If you offered me $1 million, I wouldn't go back and live through middle school. It was horrific. It really was. But I think that we try to grow our girls up too fast. And then, you only get to be your age one time, right? So I think it's sad. I
Oh,
think
for
it's sad that
sure.
it looks like a college student. I really do.
You know, as an autistic kid in the early 2000s, I'm going to say didn't have it easy, but I look back on some of my very silly looking photos and questionable fashion choices. And there's something I look back on it fondly. You know, my husband and I, we've known each other since we were in middle school, and no one can razz each other like we can going through old photos. So, and they're missing this, but I will say, so just to present that other perspectives, I mean, when I was their age, I was learning the hard way not to wear pigtails to the 6th grade. And that lesson came courtesy of playground bullying. So honestly, I'll admit, learning life lessons from memes is probably better. I didn't have memes. I had Sharon or Sandra from gym making fun of me. Memes, probably better. Probably better.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. Do you know my girls, you're about their age, right? So back in the day, you guys had like lip smackers and things like that, but we used to have this oily lip gloss and it came in this tube and it had like a roll top. And when
I've
you
seen
put it
that.
on, you literally looked like you had been eating bacon. I mean, it was just like, and it had all these different flavors, but we just poured it on and it was
Exactly,
it's
because you're not quite a kid and you're not quite a woman, so you get this in between stage makeup.
oily picture of me in 7th grade where it literally looks like I have olive oil all over my mouth. Yeah.
Nora. Oh,
Lovely.
that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely very bittersweet. The stores might be gone, but the memories are still glitter glued to our hearts.
Those that we want to remember and those that we don't.
And you can't convince me that a $40 serum beats a $3 pack of lip smackers.
I totally agree. Amen to that.
Now that we've chatted about pop culture, let's go into our interview with Amanda Browning from Amanda's Farm to Fork. Our guest today wears many hats. She is a baker, businesswoman, community builder, and today she is adding another hat, which we will announce at the end of this interview. But for the moment, hello, Amanda. Do you mind taking a moment to introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Amanda Browning, and I own Amanda's Farm to Fork with my husband. We have a wedding venue, we have a tea room, we have a commercial kitchen that we do catering out of. We actually have a restaurant license through White County, but we are a non-conventional restaurant, so we open when we want to. We do cooking classes here. And we also have a farm stand in Lula that we put a lot of our goodies, the staples that people loved over the years and were missing from not having a regular restaurant. So that is now available in Lula, but we just do a little bit of everything.
Wow. And I have to say, I am super excited, not just to talk about your business, but I'm going to tease it again, this big announcement that's going to come at the end of the interview. But for the time being, we are going to chat about the heart, the human behind the cinnamon rolls, the tea parties, and the farm to fork suppers that have made Amanda a local treasure. So, Amanda, before we transition to your big announcement, let's start where most people know you best, which is in the kitchen with the apron, in the homemade dress, the tea room, and of course, your newer farm stand.
Yes, so we didn't initially. We started out with Amanda's Farm to Fork. That was from our home where we did a dinner delivery service, and then that went to us opening a restaurant in Lula in 2018. So 2015 we started. 2018 we opened our first restaurant. In 2021 we were blessed with this phenomenal space in White County. And so then we worked on each building individual. The first building was the tea room. Then we transitioned our kitchen. And the kitchen has been the most phenomenal spot. Not just because I love to cook and I loved catering and all the stuff, but it's big enough that I can do cooking classes in it. And for me, that's where my heart is, to be able to share the love of cooking with everyone. It's so much fun. So much fun.
And I love the kind of generational heritage aspects of that, because not everybody has a mom or a grandma who will put the apron strings on and teach you how to make bread or teach you how to bake the cookies. But it's still something that people crave to learn. And especially now, we've seen a huge reintroduction of crafting and cooking and the kind of old domestic, habits. And you,
Homesteading.
yes, homesteading. And you have built your business from a real turning point in your life. So can you take us back to, I guess it was 2015, when you started cooking for neighbors after your time in the corporate world came to an end?
Yes. So I had worked for 22 years for the same company. I was making a little over $100,000 a year. And 3 weeks before Christmas, I was fired. 5 kids, 2 houses. My husband and I, we lost one house. We reserved the farm. We were able to save the farm, which saved us because that farm then transitioned to Amanda's Farm to Fort, where initially we were raising all our own chickens, raising all our own pork, raising all of our own vegetables at the garden. And we were using that to do all the meals that we were doing. It wasn't until 2018 when we got our restaurant that the restaurant just kind of took on a life of its own. We thought small, and Lula thought big, and they embraced us in such a way that we could no longer keep up with the farm, but we were still able to do amazing things at the restaurant, the cooking classes and regular restaurant hours. And we would have after hours tea parties at that time for people that wanted to celebrate a bridal shower or a baby shower or those sort of things.
Right. And eventually, I know that there was this transition where you purchased this really lovely property in White County. And when was it that you realized that Amanda's Farm to Fork was more than a stopgap, that it was becoming a true business?
I really think when we opened the restaurant that I never ever wanted to limit myself. So that was part of it. I always had big dreams, and I'm one of those people that writes down a million ideas, and they may not all come to happen, but those ideas are always in existence that I can always go back and look at. So when we realized we had to outgrow the restaurant and we were looking, and I mean, like literally had been to my poor realtor, God bless her, Laura Smith. She took us everywhere, and we would go to all these places trying to find that spot. And like when you walk into a place, your heart feels it, the essence of the whole place. And when we walked on this property, which at the time was Woodland Gardens, it was a schoolhouse from 1896. And it was the first time my husband Rooster and I had walked on a place, and he looked at me and I looked at him. We're like, this is it. This was it. And when we walked up and had to open the door, this is like so emotional for me. But when we had to open the door and it was this old skeleton key, it was like, I'm home. I am where I'm supposed to be. And from that, I thought, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to make it happen. And each year, without a doubt, it has gotten bigger and better. From the cooking classes, from the weddings that we've had here, from to being able to have the tea room, the women that come in here and embrace this craziness of mine, because I change everything all the time. It is just such a feeling of love, and it just comes from such a good place that I can't be here and not be happy. That is the best way that I can describe it. I mean, now for the farm stand, I come in here at 3 o'clock in the morning to bake for everything fresh for the farm stand. Most people ask me, are you crazy? How do you feel going in by yourself at 3 o'clock in the morning? And I'm like, I feel like I'm in the safest place on earth. And I don't know why. And that could be very naive of me. But to watch the sun come up over my buildings when I'm here, or even when I'm here and watch the sunset, every day is a blessing. It is a blessing, an unbelievable blessing.
Absolutely.
And when I want people to come here and embrace it and love it like I do. And when you see these grown women dress up for these tea parties, and they run to the carriages or run to our Alice in Wonderland setting, or run to the waterfalls to get their pictures taken, my heart just, I'm elated. I don't even know how to describe the feelings, but it is just, wow.
They do. They love it. People love your events. It cannot be overstated how devoted a following that you have, and it's because you love them right back too.
Yes, yes.
And so it's your venue and it's your food, but it's you. I was telling my editor about you, and she described you as magnetic. And I thought that is the exact wording that I should have used in my article as the writer of the article. But it's true. And now that we've talked about your magnetic personality,
Aw.
I know, Amanda, you're taking another leap, not just
Yeah.
serving meals, but serving your cities. Do you want to share what that is?
Yes. So, I have now lived in Lula for 32 years. When I think back about that, I'm so in shock. But I left my hometown in Michigan in 1993. I moved straight to Lula. I lived in a garage apartment across from the main bridge in Lula. It's so funny. In 1993, I paid $275 a month to live there. And I have never left. That has been my home. And I've had many opportunities to move to other areas, but my heart was never in it to move to another area. So now I've decided to take that love for my community, my people, and the area itself, and I'm going to run for mayor.
That
So
is so exciting. I love that.
it
When
is.
you told me that, I immediately put down what I was doing, and I had to share it with my husband. I was just so excited. I think that is such a great step. You're a local. You've been there, as you said, for 32 years. You've invested in the community as a entrepreneur, but also just as a friend and a neighbor. Everybody knows Amanda Browning. You know the issues of the community.
I do.
Exactly. And, you know, this leads me to ask, how did your experience as a small business owner kind of shape your understanding of what Lula needs?
So when I was downtown in Lula, long story short, we had a few very bad incidences of what shouldn't be done business wise in Lula. Not that we had done anything wrong, but how Lula enacted having other businesses come into town, because they hadn't put very much thought in how one business would affect the other. And so I learned a lot during that time. I learned a lot about how the government in Lula works. I learned a lot how the councilmen work. I learned so much about, at that time, our mayor was Jim Greer, and God bless him. He is the sweetest man. His wife, Miss Marilyn, we still call her the First Lady of Lula because she is truly, in essence, the First Lady. I mean, all of it is wonderful when it comes to her. But I just feel like the town is growing. It's growing at such a large rate, not just homes, but also industry wise. And I want to be part of that. I don't want I don't want our small town to lose that small town essence. I do believe we do need to grow in some ways, but I want to be part of that. I want to be in the middle of it. I don't want to just be sitting on the sidelines with no observation and just when it gets here, it gets here. So being mayor, I don't have a vote, but I sure do get to be in the middle of it all. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about seeing what's coming to our town because it won't be long before we'll have the inland port just down the road. A lot of the property in Lula has been sold off to light industry, so we'll have some factories coming in, some other warehouses. But I'm hoping that in long-term plans for Lula, they start thinking about more small businesses. We have a lovely coffee shop called The Perk that's wonderful. We have a wonderful, we have Atlas Pizza that's been there a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Neighborhood Kitchen that's a restaurant where my restaurant used to be. We have Grooming on the Tracks that everyone loves to take their pets to. We have Lula Nails that have been in business for over 20 years just in the area. Mm-hmm. So there's so much that Lula has to offer, but I want to see and I want to be part of how it grows, not just looking from afar. Right. And I think that that's important, especially if you love an area and you want to mold it to what you see. being part of that is so important, because if you can't do it from the outside.
Right. Yeah. And it's, I think about places like historic Gainesville, like the downtown square, right? Or even historic Alpharetta. These places, they kept their trees. They did have growth, right? But they had
Yes.
the infrastructure to meet the growth largely. And they didn't
Right.
put in a bunch of chains, right? Most of the businesses downtown are independently owned, kind of
Right.
boutique businesses that people like. And that's why they stay open and they actually contribute back into the community. The same can be said for Alpharetta. You don't see, and I like Starbucks, but you don't see a Starbucks downtown. You see Valor Coffee, right?
Right.
You see 2B Bakery, and that's been there for at least a decade, probably more. And it provides the services and goods that people want to have. And so there are ways, obviously I don't think Lula is going to be Alpharetta, right, anytime
Right.
soon. And I don't think that the people of Lula want that. But the one place you don't want to be, and I say this as a former Forsyth County resident who has family that still lives there, who still loves Forsyth County and coming, and, you don't want it to be coming, right? Where in the downtown square, there's no trees really to speak of. There's a jail in the downtown. They actually had to create a new town square because they put a
Wow.
jail downtown. And then that town square, that new town square, businesses can't stay open because the rent is too much. And there's no trees in that downtown square because it's just so overdeveloped.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's definitely that balance of we want and have to accept that growth is part of life, but also the infrastructure has to be in place. There has to be a vision for what does it look like. Absolutely. And how you're a woman of faith, how do faith and family guide your vision for leadership?
So I'll say I never do anything without praying about it first. And I am not an on the spot girl. So if somebody comes to me and says, Amanda, I need a decision made today, you probably won't get it. I pray about it. I discuss it with my husband. When my kids were still living at home, we've had many table conversations where we're like, this is how we once got chosen for wife swap.
Oh,
And that
God.
was a huge decision for our family. I mean, we made it through, I want to say 20 to 25 different interviews. We did interviews as a family, interviews separately. But when we first came to the kids and said, hey, Wife Swap wants us, I remember their faces at the time and they were all shell shocked. They're like, you're kidding, right? And I was like, no, no. And we've actually had a few different TV shows since then that have contacted us. But again, it was always something that I needed to pray about and make a decision. And the Lord's going to lead me to where I need to be. And I truly believe whatever His plans are going to be far better than any plan I have ever thought out. So by putting Him first, I know that I'm going to get where I need to be.
Absolutely. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for sharing your story from supper tables to City Hall. Whether folks meet you first through your cinnamon rolls or through your campaign, they are sure to see the same spirit of service. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so thrilled to be able to be on your podcast.
Thank you. All right, we'll talk soon. Bye.
Thanks.
That. So, all right, friends, it is time for one of our favorite parts of the show, and that's our advice segment. Now, this is where we read your letters, your questions, and sometimes your confessions and try to offer a little light and a little real in response.
Absolutely. This one was sent to me a while ago when I was running my tea time segment. And I want to start by saying we are not therapists. We are just two ladies with a few decades of life experience between us, a lot of coffee, and hearts that really do actually want to see you flourish. Might sometimes make the occasional, jab or two as I do so, but we do. We want to see you flourish.
So, let's dive into today's question. I love my stepdaughter, Janet, but I think she could be beautiful if she just lost weight, bought decent clothing, and practiced better hygiene. Girl, you have to brush your hair every day. She struggles with depression and anxiety due to her looks and bullying, but she grows resentful and complains to her mom, who has partial custody, also an obese woman, who then complains to my husband when I try to speak honestly with her and coach her on a better look. I live in the real world, and in the real world, ugly will always make you unhappy. How can I help her without causing her dad to get mad at me? Sincerely, not the wicked step.
Okay, then Nora, will let you take a stab at this one. I have to admit, this one's just not sitting right with me, but let's see what you have to say.
Well, it's obvious that the parents have gone through a divorce and dad has remarried. We don't know if mom is remarried, but I learned something in my own life experience is that when you get married and you have children, you form a tribe. And that little tribe is your little tribe. And then you get divorced, right? Hopefully you don't get divorced, but when you get divorced, and you might go on and marry someone else, and he might go on and marry somebody else, and y'all might form your own little tribe, but your children will not have a tribe until they get married and have their own family. And it really is a sad situation because they are in no man's land. So I don't know how long parents have been divorced, but obviously she is struggling because she's in no man's land, right? She doesn't have a tribe. She doesn't feel she belongs. She doesn't know where she wants to go. And this stepmother really does not have a right whatsoever to give her any advice. Advice should come from her mom or her dad. Stepmother needs to keep her mouth shut because she's not earned the respect of this girl. It doesn't really say how old she is, but regardless, also, I've always felt that you can look in a mirror and you can tell if your hair needs brushing or not, right? You can also look in a mirror, and if you like your skin and you like your size, that's you. So she doesn't need to be telling this girl that her hair needs to be brushed or that she needs to lose weight. She could buy her some new clothes that fit, not that are too small so you can lose weight to get into them if she wanted to, or buy her some sparkly glitter or some lip smackers or something like that just might encourage her to want to look differently, but she needs to keep her mouth shut. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's no wonder Janet is struggling with depression and anxiety, given the kind of guidance she's been receiving from you. So your letter makes it clear that a striking lack of empathy exists in this relationship, and it just seems like you don't understand what she's facing. What Janet needs right now isn't criticism or unsolicited advice. I think she needs compassion and support. And to begin with, maybe just shift focus away from her appearance and toward activities that build her confidence and spark joy. Even well-meant critiques can be just really damaging at this age, in any age.
At any
Yeah.
age.
And instead,
Advice is considered criticism. That's something that you need to tell yourself every day. And,
absolutely.
wouldn't it be fun if she gave her, like, I don't know, a few Visa gift cards and said, hey, why don't you and your dad go somewhere and you buy you some new shoes or some clothes? And, her dad could help her pick them out, but stepmom needs to back off.
I
Big
agree.
time.
And, instead maybe show her the value of self-care and but through modeling, invite her on a shopping trip to find clothes that she feels comfortable and attractive in. Plan hikes, right? Or gym sessions that you can enjoy together without saying, you should do this to lose weight, but just why don't we do this because it's fun? Maybe treat her to a spa or nail day. If she's biting her nails, say, once you stop biting your nails, we can go get your nails done. Things like that. There are ways to nurture health and bonding and relaxation without making it all about her weight or being explicit, but just creating an environment that shows a better way. Because I don't think this woman hates her stepdaughter. I think she's contemptuous of her. But I think to this woman, maybe appearance is really, really valuable. And I think she genuinely believes that if she fixes her appearance, then all of her problems will go away. So there's definitely some serious issues here. I do think stepmom probably does care about her stepdaughter. She's just her priorities are just way out of whack. And, she needs to meet Janet where she's at. Join her in the activities that she enjoys. The stronger your bond, the more open she'll be in hearing your perspective down the road. And as a stepmother, I think your role is just to support her emotionally and help her build a healthy sense of self-worth, and criticism and pressure will only further alienate her.
And I think because she's already developed this kind of critical view of her stepdaughter, that it would be better if dad took her to get her nails done. And I think it would be dad took her to buy her clothes or whatever. And then stepmom can say, oh, I love your nails. I love that new shirt. And start there, because even if they were to go to a gym, this child already has in her mind that her stepmother doesn't like the way she is. So that's my 2 cents, is back off, allow dad to spend time with daughter, and, she's got to earn that spot. Stepmoms are tough. It is hard to be a stepmom. You've got to earn your spot, and it doesn't come easy. Doesn't come easily.
All right, are you ready to talk over some headlines?
It's been a rough week, hasn't it?
Yeah. It has been a tough week. And when Nora and when we started this podcast, we went back and forth about whether to include a headline segment.
Right.
And in the end, we felt like it was something we just couldn't leave out, because yes, we are North Georgia girls, but our identities, our lives are tied into these larger national and really even global conversations. And without touching those stories, the show would feel half-baked. And that's why we include headlines. But we do it our way. We don't chase the hot takes. We are not interested in stirring up the kind of outrage that media outlets intentionally provoke to get shares and comments online. Instead, we want to look at these big stories through the lens of how Georgia women may interpret them and how we interpret them as Georgia women. And we don't stop at the national. We bring in state headlines too, from environmental conservation to politics to culture and religion. If it is shaping the national conversation, we want to sit with it. We want to unpack it and see what it means for us Georgia girls, which brings us to our conversation today, the one that everyone is having right now. And that is the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We don't want to get lost in the weeds of a political back and forth. Instead, we want to pause on just some simple but essential lessons from this moment, lessons which are transcendental, which are deeply human, and hopefully fundamentals that we can unite around.
Yeah. And it is something heavy. I mean, it's not something easy to talk about. It really reveals the state of our society, political violence. And with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it has really sparked some deep conversations. And not just about the act itself, but about the response of many who felt justified in, I can't even say it, but celebrating his death. So let's be clear that no matter where you stand politically, violence and the celebration of violence should never be acceptable in a civilized society. So when we reach a point where we dehumanize those we disagree with, we've crossed a very dangerous line. And Charlie Kirk was a polarizing figure. He provoked and challenged and stirred emotions on both sides of the political spectrum. But disagreement, even deep disagreement, is part of democracy. Assassination is not. Murder is not. And celebrating someone's death reveals something very broken, not about the person who died, but about us as a society.
I agree. Yeah. I grew up in the 90s when tolerance was what was really emphasized. Even in elementary school, the theme was tolerance. And I don't hear the conversation of tolerance as much anymore. But I've heard it said that a good compromise means nobody leaves happy. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you're tolerating something, it doesn't mean that you're happy with it. It doesn't mean you're approving of it. It means that you're allowing it to happen.
Yeah. And so you come to the point where you ask yourself, so why have we stooped to this level as a society? And I think that there are a few reasons. One is that we've lost a face-to-face dialogue. People hide behind their keyboards and they've literally learned to just be mean. Whereas when you're face to face to people, it's a little tougher to be mean. But behind those screens, it's not so hard, you know?
Absolutely.
I I also feel that there's an erosion of shared values. We no longer seem to agree that human life has inherent dignity, regardless of politics. And then we have the culture of outrage where, we've normalized hostility. And that's what I mean by texting. And, people say that some of the meanest things. And I just don't believe that you would say those things if you were in front of someone. And then I do believe there's a spiritual and moral decline, though I do believe that in younger people, Jesus is becoming cool again. Jesus was really cool when I was young, right? When I was a teenager, it was really cool to be a Jesus fanatic, right? I
It's
think that's
counterculture at this point. So the pendulum is swinging the other way. So when the culture writ broad is secular, then it's counterculture to be a Christian.
right. So political violence is never appropriate, and celebrating is totally beneath us as a society. And then if we want to heal our country, it starts with remembering that our opponent is still our neighbor. I mean, that's the major thing that Jesus taught us was love your enemy. Love your enemy as yourself.
Exactly.
Violence makes choice, but it cannot build a future.
Right. And I think about, when Melissa Hortman was killed. And it actually appears that it was a Tim Waltz appointee with schizophrenia who killed her, from what
Uh-huh.
I understand. And I thought that was terrible, right? I thought that was devastating when Luigi Mangione killed Brian Thompson.
Yeah.
No, I was appalled by that violence. When I heard about Gretchen Whitmer's potential abduction, I thought that was terrifying. So there's no exception to this rule for me. I've always consistently believed in nonviolence, and it's appalling to me how normalized this acceptance of violence is in our culture at this moment.
And if you go back a few decades, you look at when Ronald Reagan was shot. Never, never did anyone applaud or be excited that he was shot. John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy, when he was shot. Now, I know that there were Republicans out there, but they didn't go around cheering. I mean, we had this reverence for life and the position and everything else. I look at 9/11 and the towers were hit. There wasn't anyone celebrating or saying, wow, that should have happened. But now, oh my goodness. It is. I read a comment that said there isn't enough champagne in the United States to celebrate. And I couldn't even fathom that someone would say that.
Yeah, it actually, I've read all of Game of Thrones, right? I'm not an easily shocked person. I've, grown up, I learned what the Middle East was because of 9/11. Lived through the COVID
Right.
pandemic. I'm not an easily shocked person. I don't clutch my pearls easily, but I saw that too, and it shocked me. It
Yeah.
actually shocked me. Thousands of comments like that on the New York Times comment section, and thousands, I mean truly thousands. And it actually did, it surprised me. And I say this as someone who subscribes to the New York Times. I love the New York Times features. I've learned so much from the New York Times about how to be a writer. And it was devastating. But
Did
you
you
made some good points.
did you
Sorry.
hear Eric did you hear Erica Kirk when she spoke?
I have not heard all of it. I have heard the highlights of it, but I know that you mentioned some things about that.
She was amazing. And I think that one of the most striking moments was just her standing up there, and you could see all the emotion. It was very raw on her, but at the same time, she was like in control. Like she knew where she was headed. I mean, she had it together, and it was really, really beautiful. I guess it is defense of him, her pain, and just speaking peace over everyone. And I think it was so important for her to come out because, I mean, me personally, I absolutely loved Charlie Kirk. I loved how he went on college campuses. I loved how he talked to people. He wasn't about division. Now, he had some very strong opinions, but that's okay. I have strong opinions, and I can voice my opinions, but he let other people voice theirs too. It wasn't like he shut people up, and he wants to continue his legacy.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is that I actually really wasn't super familiar with him until his death. I just knew about him more from uh, tertiary things, right? Because he was so involved with the presidential campaign. But he was slightly for people before my time. I came of age and like I was starting to attend college in 2013. And I think that was right around the time that he was starting to get active. So he just wasn't the big voice yet for college campuses. So TPU wasn't a huge presence back when I was in college. And those weren't really the conversations happening in 2016 and 2018 when I was, that was like a highly polemic period. But I've become very familiar with him since his death, right? And one of the most striking moments, I agree with you, after Charlie Kirk's assassination was when his wife, Erica, spoke out. And what stood out to me was what she didn't say. So she didn't offer that almost automatic line about forgiveness and unity that our culture so often pressures grieving families to say right away. And I don't want to fault families for saying it, and I don't fault them because grief, goodness knows, takes all kinds of shapes. But I do question the culture that demands it. I think decades of this milquetoast, soft pedaled preaching in American churches have produced this idea of cheap forgiveness, of peace and love and moving on without the harder conversation about justice. Because to quote Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King, right? Peace without justice is no peace, right?
Right.
And
Right.
Erica didn't swear retribution, but she didn't give these baseless platitudes. She didn't just immediately say, I forgive him. Instead, she vowed to carry her husband's message forward. And honestly, that felt braver and more truthful. It's what one would expect a widow to feel. And we see this with like Eliza Hamilton, right? Where she wanted to preserve her husband's legacy and carry his message forward. That just feels more authentic. And I could see that from any politician's wife or any murder victim's wife or spouse. Like that's what they want to do. And that's just telling the truth that you want to see justice. And you're going to make sure that they're not forgotten.
And Carly, I think something that's so significant about Charlie Kirk is that his objective was to make heaven crowded. I mean, most of his discussions were about Jesus Christ, and Erica just wants so much to continue that message, and she, faith over fear and love over vengeance and hope over despair, which is really what Charlie Kirk was all about. He was just
Right.
amazing individual and so young. He was 31 years old.
One.
I know.
Yeah, it's very striking to me, the similarity there. Just because you just kind of feel that, you feel that age similarity. And, that how she responded, right? It does take incredible strength. Most people, I think, in the wake of such a loss would understandably seek retribution, or they might fall into that other camp of giving meaningless platitudes to assuage the culture so that they can go on and mourn in peace. But I thought that her speech at least turned that moment into a lesson, not just for her family or her supporters, but for the whole nation. She said, we don't fight evil with more evil, basically, and emphasized not losing our humanity. Her words, I think, were kind of a rebuke to all who might have cheered a death because of politics. And she reminds us that if we celebrate violence, we've basically lost our way. So,
Yeah.
Showing grace, right? Where it would have been easy to show hate without forsaking justice.
And I think that her speech is something that history will remember, not just because of who she is, but she has like a clothing line. It's called Proclaim. And when she sells a shirt, she gives money. She donates the money to homeless shelters. She's an incredible individual, but she really tapped into wanting to heal our culture and heal society. And she pointed out that the outrage and everything that people feel, she, instead of, like wanting to be revengeful, she said, I'm going to get his message out louder and stronger. And you're not going to quiet Charlie Kirk. And it was really beautiful. It was beautiful. I think one of the saddest moments was when she talked about her 3-year-old daughter and how when she comes home, her daughter runs up and hugs her and says, Mommy, where's Daddy? And that just got me, and she said, well, he's on a work assignment with Jesus right now, and she just said over and over again, she's 3. I mean, what do you say? And I don't know what you say to a 3-year-old, I don't know.
Yeah. And what's interesting too, just meditating on language, is how language can get twisted around in these moments. So, for instance, Matthew Dowd went on MSNBC and basically said Kirk was a divisive figure. This was as like live as this incident was occurring, as this assassination had just taken place. He's called him a divisive figure whose words led to this outcome. And to me, that's victim blaming, just pure and simple. Then you have people like Hassan Piker, people who say things like punch a Nazi. And sure, later they'll insist it's rhetorical, but when you label mainstream conservative figures as fascists or Nazis, and then you say it's okay to punch Nazis, you have built a permission structure for violence. And the irony is that the very people creating that climate want to be seen as the peaceful ones. Now, let me be clear. I don't believe that words are violence. Violence is violence. And, this point has been made for years. Speech, even when it's offensive speech, is not the same as hitting somebody with a baseball bat. To say otherwise is to literally just collapse the very categories that protect free discourse. So when Bernie Sanders supporter opened fire at the congressional baseball game and shot several Republican politicians, I didn't blame Bernie Sanders. He didn't pull the trigger. And in fact, Bernie Sanders actually gave some very strong words in opposition to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, by the way. But here's where the nuance matters. While words are not violent, words can create an atmosphere that makes violence feel permissible to unstable individuals. And that's what people mean by stochastic terrorism. When you hammer over and over again that your opponents are literal Nazis or existential threats to democracy, you don't control who's listening, right? And eventually, someone takes that rhetoric as a call to action. And so my position is this: free speech matters. And we can't treat words like bullets. But at the same time, leaders and commentators and influencers, they all have a responsibility not to dress their enemies up as monsters and then act surprised when someone attacks them.
Exactly. Yeah. And for Charlie Kirk, that was really the message that he was delivering, is that as long as we communicate, he said that. He said communication is key in society, in politics, in marriage. That's how we can come together. And when we stop communicating, that's when the violence happens.
Absolutely. That is so correct. And on that note, we will wrap up our episode for today. It is ending on a solemn note, but it's been a solemn week.
Yeah, it has been. It has been. And as always, we thank you for pulling up a chair with us. And these conversations mean so much, and we love sharing this space with you.
To follow along with me, you can connect on Facebook, Instagram, or my website, all under the Cute North Georgian magazine.
And to keep up with me, check out Nora Almazan, and that's Almazan, all A's. My husband says it's because he's so awesome. To keep up with me, check out Nora Almazan at Almazan. I have several books out there, got a couple coming up, and you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram.
All right. And of course, stay current with Between Us Girls here on Spotify and YouTube.
And this time we did video.
I know. We'll be doing that some more. I liked it.
We're stepping up. So we're so glad you joined us today. Until next time, take care and stay in
Stay
good company.
in good company.